appreciate you doing so. Conscious of what's happening at the moment. There's
Go ahead.
Going on, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done over the next couple of days, I'm sure. The whole focus for today has been consistent with what we've done over the last few months, which has been really how can we share our knowledge and add value to you in your business to help with, whether it be a technical perspective or just coming into a group forum like this and allowing different businesses to connect and share learnings, findings, and just help each other through the challenges we're facing. So we'll talk a lot about things from, how do you maintain that positivity from a work from home scenario, productivity, while still trying to maintain a focus on growth. There's employee wellness. There's a whole range of challenges that everyone on this call is facing. So it's a great opportunity for us to do that. There's a slide, I'm sure, on the screen at the moment, but I don't want to go into too much about us. A lot of the people on the call will know a lot about us, and there'll be some businesses that don't. In terms of who Milan Industries are, we were founded in 2004 whilst Milan was still in high school, studying at the local Northcote High School, and he started doing a lot of work for the school from a development and hosting perspective. And over time, we've definitely matured into a more established business. And we see ourselves as a genuine partner with our clients. We have a people-first business focus in the way that we do things, and do everything from IT support, security, hosting solutions, and a lot more. But we're based in Melbourne with offices through regional Victoria and across the APAC region, with clients ranging from as low as Hobart up to the top of Queensland, and companies in Sri Lanka and London that we support. So we've got a broad reach. That's a really brief snapshot about us. We don't want to take up too much time talking about our background or products. It's really an opportunity to allow everybody to connect. So Chris, thank you. I'll hand over to you. And again, thank you to everybody for taking the time to join today.
Thanks, Jordan. And likewise, I don't want to spend too much time talking about product or specifics of an organisation, but I just did want to introduce 8x8 really briefly for those folks who may not be aware of us. So we're an organisation that partners with Milan Industries. My role at 8x8, along with Diana's role, is to support our partners. And so thank you for the invitation, Jordan and Milan, to join, and really looking forward to spending some time with you all today. In summary, 8x8 is a market-leading communications, collaboration, and contact centre platform. We're using one of the products today to meet with here. And essentially, we've been recognised by a lot of industry folks about the quality of the service that we deliver. We've been recognised as a leader by Gartner for 8 years in a row as Unified Communications as a Service leader. That's actually that Magic Quadrant, which I'm sure most of you might be familiar with, has only existed for 8 years, as an example. One thing that we're very, very proud of is the fact that we own, maintain, and develop the entire technology solution. And so that gives us the ability to continue to be the, I guess, masters of our own destiny in a sense, when we talk about how we want to see the strategic and the technical direction of our organization and our platform. And it really is that single platform that allows organizations to have video meet, some of the stuff we're going to talk about, maybe supporting work from home and other elements of organizations. So really didn't want to spend too much time talking about that. I did want to start with, I guess, the conversation starter slide for today, which would be talking a little bit about what we've seen in the market from our clients and from our partners, and just general conversation. It's really encouraging for me to see a really broad range of organizations represented today. People from business and professional services, finance, but through to community services and education as well. And I think that the thing that's holding us in common is the fact that we've got to adapt and evolve our business to continue to work through these times that are sort of a little bit, foreign, but becoming more normal. a conversation that I've had frequently, and again, Jordan and I have shared about this. In the first instance, I think when the first wave of COVID hit and the response was to shut down, there was a little bit of a grab and run mentality where you picked up the laptop off your desk. If you were lucky and you had a car spot, you picked up a screen and maybe a office chair as well, and you rushed home and you set up as best you could. But now, as we're seeing this pandemic situation continue and evolve, and we're seeing waves come and go, it's time for us as business leaders to start to think a little bit more strategically. And so a couple of the topics that I think that we would like to talk about today specifically, and get your feedback, this is learning for all of us, is to understand things like how are we tracking in terms of managing welfare for our teams, managing our compliance requirements, managing productivity. And so Jordan and Milan are obviously very familiar with most of the folks on this session today. And so this is where we stop presenting slides and we start talking as people who, in the new world, meet remotely rather than face to face. So I might kick off the question to Jordan to talk about productivity as a first point, but as Jordan is getting to the mic, I'll just share really briefly a conversation I had with some of my colleagues in the UK last night that were talking about a scenario in recruitment where there was a real challenge for this organisation that we were chatting about, in the sense that they were really struggling to measure the KPIs of their team. And so that flowed into a business cost for them about what are they going to do with regards to incentives payments and things like that. And so the notion of what we're talking about in that first wave of grab and keep the business going, but then that has a flow-on effect over time where quarters are coming and going and people's remuneration is really important. And so how are businesses adapting and evolving to meet those challenges? So Jordan, I'm not sure if there's somebody that you might introduce to us who could potentially take that question about productivity in a remote work environment.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I know that there's a lot of business owners and leaders I've been speaking to that have it's obviously a daily challenge that they think about. But I was actually having a chat with Mark Goody yesterday around this specific topic, and in terms of how do you measure, how do you deal with it? So, Mark, perhaps if you want to maybe just introduce yourself and where you're from, and you shared some really good thoughts around productivity and some ways to manage that. That would be great to hear your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Jordan. So my name is Mark Goody. I'm the CEO of Merry Outreach Support Services. So we deliver homelessness services from all the way from Whittlesea all the way into Northcote. At the moment, I suppose during this period, it's quite strange where most businesses are gearing down. Our businesses really, there's a lot of opportunity and growth. And I say that, in an embarrassed way, but also this is the business we work in. When times are tough in the homelessness sector, work ramps up for our types of businesses. I'm just sending out emails and doing things right now as we're repurposing our organisation because of all the changes and getting worker permits, etc., out there, which I suppose a lot of workplaces do. This is a time for change, and we have to adapt really quickly to make sure that we're ready to go forward in the especially the next 6 weeks. But what we're really looking at is beyond that. What type of organisation we're going to be beyond that, with the changes that will occur for society. We've had to put in many submission and grant applications at the moment. So as things change in society and more people are becoming homeless, unemployed, that's going to ramp up a lot more business for us. There's a lot of grants from not only the DHHS, so the federal government, but grants with the local state government and also local councils that we have contracts with. And with that, we've had to repurpose and quickly get those submissions in, write them up and say, where we're ready to do business. The other side of our business we've had to repurpose is where we get the what I call the tap on the shoulder. So government's tapping us on the shoulder. Can you do this? Can you do that? And so without staff, we've had to go to market and try and get staff to fill those contracts, and that's been quite challenging. And within all that, we have to consider all the work health and safety for new workers coming on board, how we orientate new workers. Some new workers where we can't have contact, it's going to be a struggle if we need to get workers on that work out in the field and yet contact is reduced to make sure they're working and they're compliant with new regulations. But at the same time, I think that really at the start of this, my board, I sat in a board meeting and I spoke to the board who were quite worried about where we would be as a business. And I emphatically said that, this is a time where we'll actually grow. And so where they were worried about the business collapsing, I said, be prepared for growth moreover than anything else, and the challenges that come with it. On a daily basis, we've had to, really retool, communicate with all key staff members and make sure we're all on the same page. And for an organisation that predominantly has social workers, and they weren't that IT savvy, I must say, we were lucky enough to do 365 transformation prior in the 12 months prior to COVID hitting. And so coincidentally, we were prepped to move everyone to home within much like was mentioned, we were prepped to move everyone home within, I would say, 2 days, and then just tool people up and people can work from their home base, come into the office from time to time. And we have two main offices, one in Broadmeadows where I'm at now, and the other one in Northcote. Saying that, I think like everyone else, it's become second nature to be in various types of video platforms, talking, and it's become the new world. The surprise for us is where I wouldn't allow people to probably, and I couldn't control productivity or understand what it meant. Now we're probably better at measuring some of those things for staff and capturing that content. So when they are working at home, we know that they're working at home. We're out in the field. We know they're safe. But most importantly, the future for us is, do we need large offices? I can really see that we'll probably only need half the office space, maybe even less going forward. And that will be a big change because we'll allow people to work from home because it's been really beneficial to them. I know they're sick of it at the moment. They want to get out. But I think in the future for well-being between work and home, I think they'll find it a part of general well-being. If you can be at home, do some work, put dinner on, put the washing on. By the time you finish for the day, everything's done. You can relax. That's hopefully the world we'll be living in the future. But maybe I looked at it with rose-coloured lenses because I really hope that we'll move through this by hopefully Feb next year, where we're all kind of mingling in a bit of summer sun. Does that answer that enough?
Yeah,
Jordan?
so that's a really good summary there. And I guess you touched on a couple of points that I might see if there's anybody else who would like to introduce. But so one thing, I'm going to start with your last point about February. And so the notion of how long this might go for is a little bit up in the air. And some organisations, certainly that we're working with in terms of professional services, not given the Melbourne circumstance, but as a general rule, are trying to give a level of certainty to their team, and so they're saying, what, we're not going to reconsider our situation until January, as an example. It's just to help, and I know that this is probably a little bit of a prickly subject given Melbourne's forced lockdown for the next 6 weeks, but rather than talking in 6-week chunks, are you as leaders in organisations thinking beyond the mandate and trying to build your strategy, I guess, for want of a better scenario in these uncertain times about, right, well, we're going to be doing this until after Christmas. Is there anybody who might want to contribute? And thank you, Mark, for your contribution as well.
I think I'll talk about us for a sec. We are basically not planning to be coming back into our office for the foreseeable future. We haven't had anyone working from our office since when was it, Jordan? I think it was in
Second week of March, basically.
second week of March. So we've only had one person sitting there to accept deliveries and send them out, but we haven't had anyone really working from the office at all. It has been quite challenging. We've obviously experienced issues where normally you would stand up and talk to someone over the desk. You can't really do that anymore. But I think that using a whole lot of collaborative tools, we've really started utilizing 8x8 a lot more heavily than we used to. Slack, basically communication tools that allow us to communicate as if we're sitting next to each other. We've started doing that. I don't see us coming back into the office for a very long time. I don't have a date on that because the types of clients that we're supporting, like we support food manufacturing that supply Coles and Woolworths. We supply critical industries that if something did happen and one individual in our office got affected and we couldn't operate, I can't see that being a possibility as a risk that we can actually take. So
I think, Milan, is it fair to say that prior to COVID coming along, whenever we spoke about work from home, it was sort of a little bit frowned upon, and then although almost, definitely overnight, we started doing it. And, we've done definitely a few things from, implementing an EAP program fairly early on, daily check-ins, an ideas mailbox as well, where staff can send through ideas where there's things they're going to experience working from home that not everyone will be aware of. And it's an opportunity to share some of those findings. But Theo, perhaps, I think he's just he's preoccupied there. But maybe Damien, I know that you've got a lot of experience in dealing with a dispersed workforce and also Tracy as well. But maybe if we could hear from the two of you around some of the learnings that you've previously had and how you've been, how that's helped you through this process.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Well, we're a listed company as well on the ASX. We're an ed tech company delivering curriculum into the K-12 market, and our main customers are in the States and the Philippines and the UK, and not here. So we've always had a dispersed workforce, and it's always been virtual. So that part's fine. Where we're finding difficulties is our customers. I need your consent on a few items to continue. Is our customers. So I don't know how that happened. Is our customers. And you think of teachers and parents, and now they've got kids at home, and they think this is going to be happening for a very long time to come. Is school will go back for a couple of days, and then there'll be a wave, and then they'll come back home again, and it'll be isolated, and kids will keep coming back to their homes. And so the real challenge for us now is to educate teachers and parents on how to deal with this remote learning and hybrid learning environment. And it's a difficult one because it's a new world, and it's a huge disruption for them and for their kids, and so it impacts their whole families. So that's what we're dealing with at the moment. Really, how do we engage in a way that supports the uptake and supports people feeling comfortable with this new world. I've got to say, this initiative today has taught us something, that we're looking at ways of creating a hybrid model, a model where people feel that they're not just connected online, but they're connected. There's a personal physical connection, and so just the fact of getting like a breakfast to your front door and having actually something physical about this encounter, it makes a big difference. So we're initiating the idea of off-screen workbooks and activities for kids as well. So it's not just all online. It is online. It's fantastic that people connect online, but to have that physical connection, it makes a massive difference for people, and it has for me today. Like, I'm quite happy to drink out of the 8x8 cup. And I've got my headphones, and normally I wouldn't respond too well to marketing paraphernalia, but in the circumstance, I thought it was a lovely touch and a personal touch. And I think that we talk about the technology's a great solver of our issues now, but we really need to continue to bring in that personal touch and that physical touch to our customers and to our staff as well. So thanks for today. I think it's a great initiative.
Thanks, Leo. Tracy, perhaps you could share some thoughts on, you've got a dispersed workforce, and it'd be great to hear some of your findings and how, what some of the learnings you've had over the last few months, and how having that dispersed workforce may or may not have helped in dealing with COVID.
I think we may have lost Tracy, actually.
Okay.
But in terms of your conversation, Damien, while we is there anyone else in that scenario that's had to really readjust their business driver, I guess, for want of a better term? So, Damien, your key audience is now, while it's an online platform, it's just the environment that they were in, obviously in a traditional schooling sense, and maybe some online set work from home, but it was really more that environmental change. So you're an organization that is, as we talked about, is, I guess, geared for this in terms of there's not a transition from a work method of trying to take something that isn't online and make it online, but you're still seeing an impact in that change of environment.
Absolutely we are, because the thing is that there's a big difference between having a controlled environment of a classroom and then an environment where you're home. So in that remote environment, it has to become a lot more self-paced. So you need to have a lot of scaffolding, a lot of support around the student. Previously, the teacher and the classroom was the controlled environment that supported that. So we really are having to pivot with our product to support a much more self-paced model of instruction rather than a teacher-led model of instruction.
Thank you. And Nick, I think you've raised your hand. Thank you for pressing the button. Love to hear your contribution.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. Yeah, Damien, I just had a question for you, because just a little bit about us. It's DWM Solutions. We're an IT provider similar to Milan Industries, and I got a few of our customers on this call as well. So we're really interested in the discussion. I suppose a bit of our story. We were originally based in Echuca, and we had all of our staff in one office, and we were definitely those kind of, we can't trust people to work from home type of scenario. You had to watch them. But we made that transition about 5 years ago, and we've actually got staff across four physical offices at the moment, and now they're working from home pretty much all over regional Victoria. So that transition was really easy for us. They're all set up, the tech. The challenge was some productivity went right through the roof. It was amazing. Like a couple of the young guys, their productivity just went, I couldn't believe it. There's obviously a whole heap of distraction in the office and little bits and pieces they get involved in. A couple of people struggle. Me personally, I struggle working from home. So I've got a space in the office where I am now. Luckily, I'm only 2 kilometres from home, so I'm allowed to go home and back again. But that was really good. And the other thing we've got, and I'm really keen on some more information from Damien, is we have a couple of staff with young families. One in particular, one of our senior engineers, has got 2 primary school kids, and he's stressing out today, Max, because today they're back at home, homeschooling. It looks like it's going to be like that for the rest of the year, and he's really stressing about it. So any tips you've got, any information you can share, mate, I'll be all over it, because yeah, he's really concerned about his mental health for himself as well as for his kids. Yeah, so I just wondered if you had any more to expand on that.
Yeah, well, look, it's happening worldwide. I mean, I suppose it's not a great comfort, but we're all going through the same issues happening absolutely everywhere. And there's no doubt this. We did a summer program with a school in Mumbai recently, which had mixed results, because you're right, parents are stressing out. And then you have the one thing I would proffer is to say that. Yeah, it's not like school. You can't sit kids down 9 to 3 in front of a screen. There needs to be lots of incidental learning activities. If they're young ones, like if you're counting, get them out in the garden counting spiders, and so it's using that sort of using the environment around you to support the learning rather than pushing them into a structured learning environment like a school, because they're not at school and the parents can't pretend that they're teachers either. So that's one of the stressful things, is that a lot of parents think, oh gosh, I've got to now take on this role of a teacher, and they're not teachers. And so that's one thing they can do, is sort of chill and say, well, no, I'm not a teacher, I'm a parent. But, you know, the incidental learning of a parent to a child continues, and get support from the school and from the teachers to say, you know, what are the curriculum areas that we are following at the moment? You know, is it counting to 20? Is it vowel sounds, or whatever it might be? And incidentally put that into the environment and into the conversations rather than put it into a formal structure, I think that's the learning we're getting. You know, teachers are teachers, and parents don't try and be teachers. Just be parents and support your kids the best you can.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Theo, you just made comment in our chat, which I think is a really nice transition. And Damien, thank you for that advice. I'm blessed to have teenage children, but I know my colleagues who have primary school children were the first itching to get back to the office. But Theo, you made comment about leadership, and I think we're really blessed on this call to have a number of leaders in different styles of organisations. But I think what's telling so far across this call, but also the feedback that I'm getting when I'm speaking to business leaders, is that sector boundaries are disappearing, and even borders, like we just heard from Damien about whether it's region or whether it's international. Would you like to elaborate on your personal situation and how leadership has had to augment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a personal experience, but also in a business as well. So, hi everyone. I know a few people here. Hi Damien. It's been a long time, but good to see your face. So I work for a company called Vative. I'm the CEO. So I run a direct team of 13. Most of them report to me. We're still a small business, so we've got quite a flat structure. But in this circumstance, in the last lockdown, you know, one of my operations lead, he's got 2 kids, and his wife is an ICU nurse at one of the major hospitals. And so, you know, back then, still now, works back-to-back shifts, long shifts, day, nights. So he's still required, obviously, as part of his role, to continue operations going in the background. Who's an enabler across their entire business, and whilst looking after homeschooling 2 kids. And so I would see emails come through 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I know I've started to register what's going on. He's obviously doing the best he can to homeschool his kids during the day, has to then take whatever he can during the day, bits and pieces, but then have to sort of stay up all night, which can be mentally draining, because I've just recently had to experience the same thing. And so part of my role is not to sit back and have that expectation that that's what he's going to do, work all day, homeschool kids all day and all night, while his wife is providing integral community services. And so my part of myself as a leader of the organisation was to reassure him that his job is safe. It's okay to have things slip up or not move as quickly as we normally do in normal circumstances, but to start to get used to that this may be the norm for a little while longer. And so that continual reassurance gave him the motivation, and sometimes I used to say to him, listen, I don't want you working at anything past 7 o'clock at night, because I'm very, very mindful of mental health and burnout, and that could have long-term effects on him and his family personally, which will make me feel not very good if that was to happen. But even on a business as well, he's been there longer than I have, and so it's important to conserve that wisdom that he has of the entire organisation. That if he was to have a mental breakdown trying to hold everything together, he'll be off for months and potentially even years. It may not even come back. And so what sort of cost is that to the business? So then it was, I had to really have a good reflection and understand it's short-term pain, for a long-term gain, and that's I suppose the mindset that we all as leaders, because everybody have someone in their organisation of similar, but be gentle to yourself and be gentle to the others, because the entire community understands. A customer doesn't get their product or service on time because of a situation like that. I can tell you now, 99 times out of 100, they're going to understand the situation. I have not had one customer, me personally, I've slipped up not being able to meet certain deadlines. Everybody's the good thing of that, the what COVID has done, it's actually pulled the community together. There's a more closeness within the entire community, both in the business and society out there. And it seems like most people have got each other's backs, even if you don't know each other. So that's my experience. And now you're going to see my little son poke his little head at the background there. He's going to have a bit of a look, see. He's just curious, trying to go, what is going on over there? Why is Dad talking a lot?
This is world learnings.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a time when I in the morning I dropped my kids to school when they were younger, and then I would pick them up in the afternoon. And in the morning I was speaking to the US, and then in the afternoon I was speaking to a European colleague, and my kids are in the back going, "Dad, are you cooking tonight?" Because that's code for you buying pizza. And I have to explain the Australian humour to a European audience. And you know what? I think there's something really in that, and the fact that we see cats walking past, and you've got the kids and that community. So thank you very much, Theo, for sharing that. I saw a lot of people nodding along, and I think that that's a really mature approach in terms of what you're trying to drive into your organization, and that culture. Jordan, please.
Yes, thanks, Theo. Thanks for opening up and sharing a lot of that. I really appreciate it. George, I've spent a lot of time talking with you, and there's so many people on here that I'd love to hear from, and throw to. But George, we've spent a lot of time over the last 3-4 months, almost weekly, talking about what we're seeing and learning from you and what you've seen. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've been talking about today, and just get your thoughts on what's been working, what hasn't been working, and yeah.
Thank you, Jordan, and to everyone that I know on this call. Good to see your faces, and to all the new faces, hello. My name's George. I'm the founder of 2B Consulting, a growth agency helping organisations scale up their business. So I guess during this time of COVID, it forced a rethink of my business model and how I go about my work. I'm very blessed and fortunate at the moment to be working with Mark Goody at Mary Outreach Support Service as well. So it's given me a different perspective on the idea of growth, and given me a new perspective around the idea of sustainable growth as well, sustainability. And one thing this crisis has demonstrated is that whether you're one of the sectors that's impacted or not, and we could probably use a sort of a Kogan example where their share price has tripled since March, and Coles, and then on the flip side you can look at Virgin and Qantas and Flight Centre that are being decimated. The one thing that's remains quite true for me is that the old models of growth, the old models of leadership will not work in this new world. And I think when we're trying to problem solve the issues that we've got at the moment using old models, we're running into this mind game around why doesn't it feel right and what do we need to do. So really personal example for me is my daughter's in year 12, and at a drop of a hat on Sunday she found out that Monday just gone was her last day of high school, being physically at school. For her, it was quite an emotional time, and she was there were mixed emotions there around, what do I do now when I come home? I was expecting to be back at school. And what I quickly shared with her was the kind of stuff that I was seeing in a professional sense is let's just rewrite the rules. Rewrite the rules around what's going to work for you in the next 8 to 12 weeks. It doesn't need to be more than that. And I think by rewriting the rules, I think for all leaders, we need to start thinking about our own habits and our own routines. And the reason why I say that is if we put our own physical and mental well-being as a priority, I think as leaders, we're going to be in a better position to make the right decisions for the rest of our organisation. And I heard earlier around, so what does that, in a tangible sense, what does that mean? Again, old models, new world. The idea of incentive programs, for example, and managing performance. My recommendation around that is rewrite the rules around incentive plans. If you put incentive plans at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the last July 1 last year, turf them. Relook at your business. If you're repurposing your business model, think about just 2 or 3 goals that are team-based that will get you through the next 6 to 12 weeks. And that's it. And then keep iterating. And I think that iterative process makes it a lot easier for leaders to say, well, I've got blind spots here. I don't know what's around the corner. Let me focus on the things that I can control. I think if we can narrow our focus in the way that we communicate to our people, so that's one perspective, but then constantly try and look a little bit more forward and have these kind of conversations, I think then we'll get the best of both worlds, which is dealing with today in a real sustainable way, but then also having the eye a little bit over the horizon and really diversifying your network, because it's the diversity of the network rather than diversity of thought within your own organisation and getting different perspectives is what's going to introduce some new thinking that might be the difference between you struggling as a business and maybe finding a new way to repurpose your business model in a way that could give you that that growth that otherwise you wouldn't have been aware of.
Fantastic. And you know what, I think that you raised some really great points there around throwing the rule book away. And, you know, like you say, KPIs that were set on the 1st of July last year, how are they even remotely relevant potentially to an organisation today? So narrowing the focus on those couple of goals, I think, is a really great piece of advice that we can all think about, no matter our function, whether we're business leaders or just people who are looking to, you know, to maintain that sanity in your role. It does lead me to a question, though, around I guess things like compliance and organisation change, and we've got some different structures in organisations that we're talking about here. Anecdotally, I had a conversation recently with another organisation that supports the ATO of all organisations, but they had an internal policy that was very robust that said contractors were not able to effectively VPN. You know, there's a little bit more to it than that, but in summary, that was their internal policy, and the conversation was that that's a 10-year change for us to make that transition. But that happened in 6 weeks, and it happened in 6 weeks out of necessity. They weren't able to utilize a workforce to be able to deliver the JobKeeper and other benefits to really keep the economy going, and so they were forced to rethink what had been the old idiom of how that business operated. I call it a business loosely, but you know, I'm sure that there's other folks here on the call. You know, we've got financial services and other professional services, even in the not-for-profit realm, that have some compliance conversations. And so, how do you balance, and what type of support are you getting from peak bodies around guiding that transition that Theo's talking about? Sorry, that George was talking about, I should say, that, you know, rethink your business, but then how do you maintain your levels of compliance? Is there anybody that might want to jump in and talk about compliance specifically? I know that in insurance, my wife works in insurance and has done since I've known her. and they really are changing some of those practices. How do they do the call recording, as an example, and that scenario about work from home? There's several folks that have talked about the fact that you've got to have that balance between having people be safe, but then continuing to fulfill your obligation. The sector of insurance that my wife works in is supporting individuals, on their care plans and things like that. So it's almost that social work mark that you talk about, but under the auspice of insurance. So I'm not sure if there's anybody who would like to contribute to compliance and how we're managing compliance in a changing and dynamic world.
Mark?
Yeah, look, I just think for us there's a couple of key things that we have to keep an eye on for our particular business. And part of that is the work health and safety, and new rules are being created on a daily basis, and that's a real challenge for us. Today being one of them, where we have to work through exactly, and for all businesses, worker permits, etc., etc. For example, not last week, the week before, you might have heard that in Melbourne, for those of you who are in Melbourne, there's some Office of Housing high-rise towers. They were all in lockdown for the last few weeks. I'd been involved in 2 towers that we support, actually going into those towers and looking at how we support people and do some COVID testing, some proactive COVID testing. So I really made sure that if I was going to send staff in, I was going to do it myself. And so I went through that and I had no problem with it. I think that for us as an organisation, some of the things you would think there's a lot of compliance that we have to go by, and we have to tick many, many boxes. But peak bodies, I just want to touch on peak bodies. We have a number of peak bodies. Number one, Department of Health and Human Services, who I have direct contracts with. I also have Council for Homeless People, who is a peak body for us. We have a number of other peak bodies. They're scrambling as much as we are, and they're writing the rule books, and so they've got a lot of people inside them assisting us. And so sometimes it is an absolute, but it's the best guess possible. I think for us, what we've learned is I have to take not advice just off one. I have to listen to my master, DHHS, as a main funder, but I also have to listen to some of those peak bodies and also make our own minds up what we want to do and make really good, solid decisions. There's a lot of talking going on during this period, and that's a real challenge, making sure that we're all used to working in this space and having good communication and keeping things succinct. I'm trying to keep it succinct myself now, but I think that's a key thing, having the right information, getting it succinct and getting some really good outcomes really quickly, because the staff that we have to communicate to they're worried. They don't know what's going on most of the time, and they don't know if they're going to get COVID if they go out into the field. And it's a real thing, which really came home for me. My oldest daughter's a nurse, and she currently has COVID right now, and so does my granddaughter. And so that really brought it home to me, what can happen. And she'd nursed a lot of people through and to death. And so I think that when I think about our staff, I really want to make sure that they're as safe as possibly can be, and I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't be prepared to do. And when we do it, we do it as safe as we possibly can. But it is challenging. I probably went a little bit off point, but there was a couple of things I wanted to bring into that.
No, and thank you for that personal conversation as well. I'm conscious of time. We've got just over 5 minutes left, and we've really covered a lot of ground, and I felt really empowered, especially by some of the folks that have shared their personal conversations around whether it be Jordan talking about the fact that you have an employee assistance program. I love that. And through to Mark, your personal situation there, CEO as well. So thank you for those contributions. Damien, also George. Is there anybody that we haven't heard from that would like to take the floor? We really want to give everybody an opportunity to share and to offer your advice around how your organisation is coping, around how you've leveraged something that's worked for your organization.
Chris,
Going back,
it'd be good to hear maybe from Sarah. I don't know if how you feel about sharing some just what the team's experienced. I know coming and having been in the office, it's an amazing office and a really fun environment, and to go from working in such a great environment to working from home for so long, be keen to hear how it's impacted the team and what are some of the things that you've done to support them through that.
Yeah, it has been quite the transition, going from being quite a social office to not as much. But we still have quite a few group meetings during the week. All the managers have one-to-one check-ins with their direct reports. I think throughout the week, we found at the beginning, we started having meetings every day, a group meeting. And for some people, it got too much. So really, it was just about listening to what people wanted and, changing it. So now we do two. We do a 4 p.m. Friday night call, to wrap up the week, which has been really good. And then afterwards, people can stay on the call if they want and have a wee chat. We've done a few. We've tried to keep things kind of normal. Every year we do a conference, which they usually have a big awards dinner. And obviously we weren't able to do that this year, but we did send out a bottle of wine and a little hamper of snacks so that we could still do the awards, but it was at home. It was still had a very jolly feel to it. So that was good. I mean, it's not all easy. You've got to keep the lines of communication open and keep talking to people and being, there's no hard rule about you have got to have your camera on in meetings, but we do notice if people never have their camera on, and then you might want to speak with them and be like, oh, what's going on? So it's really just about, keeping the lines of communication open and making sure you're open to what the staff are going through, because we're all going through the same thing.
I think you touched on a really important point there. Sorry to interrupt you, but that you actually have to have another sense almost. You really have to be focusing not just on the content of a meeting, but also how are people absorbing that, and we don't get those one-on-one chats. We were talking about this in our virtual office yesterday about you don't get to just bump into somebody and see how they're going, and so very similar to what Damien was saying as well. I think you had that. How do we keep that communication and balance as well? So it would be remiss of me not to talk about technology just as a little close. In terms of your strategies as organizations, do you feel like you're at a point in time now, and again, this is probably a bit prickly given what's happening in the dynamic nature of Melbourne, which many of you are based, but are you thinking longer than the 6 weeks, and how does technology fit into that conversation? So maybe if we start with you, Sarah, have you got, is that falling into some thinking, or it's still, we're still in that scramble mode, for want of a better term?
Oh no, we're certainly not in scramble mode. We're battening down the hatches. We've been at home for 4 months now. Mm-hmm. We hope that this harsher lockdown, we don't know how long it's going to go. February, hopefully. It just weeks have already turned into months. So I think we've already shown that we can work from home. So that's good. And really, today's conversation just made me think I've got to make sure people are really set up at home, make sure they do have everything they need. We did the initial health and safety check when we first went home to the office, but now that they've actually been in that environment for 4 months, is your chair actually okay? Do you need another monitor? But yeah, no, we've tried to reopen the office when there were the restrictions weren't so harsh, but that was not compulsory. It was only if people wanted to go in because they needed to get out of their house, pretty much. But even so, it's the risks involved in that and people going into the office, it's great. So our office is closed now, which I think is probably for the best.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I am conscious of time, and one of the things that I know in a virtual world is that if I was meeting you in a roundtable scenario at an event, then I wouldn't have something the minute that this concludes, but I realize that our calendars are probably fuller than ever before, so to speak. So I just wanted to throw to Milan and Jordan to bring the official roundtable to a close. But personally, on behalf of Diana and myself, thank you so much for your contributions, and it was really great. And I definitely felt like I've learned something, and you've actually lifted my spirits as well. So thank you, folks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And again, thank you to everybody for taking the time to join. We really appreciate hearing and having you share a lot of your findings and even some really personal scenarios that you've experienced. Our commitment is to continue to run these types of events ongoing, but definitely through this COVID phase. So we'll be in touch and keen to hear your thoughts and get some feedback on what we could do differently. And if you have any questions about anything that anyone's discussed today, I'd love to connect you and allow you to continue to share some of those ideas and that collaboration. But yeah, again, thank you for taking the time to join. We really, really appreciate it. Milan, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for everyone for coming. It's good to see everyone's face. I haven't seen in quite a while, to be honest. So again, thanks for everyone coming. I hope that you all took something out of that. I definitely took a few nuggets out of it. So I've got to think of some additional things now with these work from home permits and everything. So it's going to be a very interesting day today.
Yeah, really do appreciate it, given the circumstances that yourselves, your organisations, and your families are currently in. So to take an hour out of that day, I know we all really appreciate that. Thank you. So happy to leave the meeting open for those who would like to stay, ask some questions, or anyone else who would like to share. I've certainly got some time, but again, respectful of people's time.
Thanks, guys. That was good. It was good to have a different perspective on different things, and yeah, not all about technology either, which was good.
Yeah, we didn't want to put you to sleep.
I don't know if Evan, I'm not sure if Evan's got time, but I really wanted to get some thoughts from yourself. I know you've been working from home for probably similar timeline to us, I believe. So it'd be great to hear from you if you've got a couple of moments.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. So I'm Emin. I'm the office manager at a company called Leyden Freer. We're an outsourced accounting and company secretarial firm. We initially had our clients come to us and ask for fee reductions, and we had a bit of unsure about what our first 3 months was going to be like. But as an outsourced service, we've found that where people are trying to cut down on some of their internal costs, we've picked up quite a lot of business through those channels. Excuse me. And just regarding our setup, we were pretty seamless in transitioning to a work from home environment, except for some of those scenarios where people get used to working with double screens, and so just setting up everybody comfortably at home on chairs that you can sit on for 8 hours a day, those types of environmental processes. And I think the main thing that we struggle with, because of the type of work that we do and what you get used to working in an office environment, has been internet connections from home. They really impact on your productivity and your focus and your drive. And so you can be, all your tools can be amazing and when they're working, but as soon as your internet connection drops out and you lose like half an hour to 40 minutes, I think that aspect is something that we really need to address going forward. Just from our company perspective, the transition was really good, and over the space of a week we had 30 staff working from home and 5 staff in remotely working in in India. So yeah, that was really, from my point of view, one of the main concerns going forward is if everybody's continuing to work in these environments, that our internet service providers, how do we allow our colleagues to get the best productivity?
So that's a really good point. And I think, again, that's that scenario. With a few folks have talked about the changing, I guess, scenario of where, and even Jordan, you talked about, let's say working from home being the exception rather than the rule. To then it's being forced on the rule. We've talked about 4 months. I actually joined 8x8 during COVID. And so I've been to the office 4 times, 2 of those times by myself. And so my interaction, I've met in person Diana once, though we probably speak and chat a couple of times a day. But she's blessed to be up caught in the border crossing of Queensland at the moment. So I don't think she's so disappointed about the border closing from Queensland to New South Wales, because she's stuck in sunny Queensland. But you raise a really great point about how do you do the checks, and Sarah, you said the same, to get people going. But now this 4 months is a minimum of 6 months, right? Because we've got 6 weeks guaranteed, and realistically, there's going to be beyond. It's probably going to be the best part of 9 to 12 months in that best case scenario. And I've forgotten to write it down. I'm sorry, but someone else mentioned, I think it was yourself, Mark, about do you need big offices? And how is that going to reorganize your thinking? And we've been really blessed at 8x8. Our team was all given a one-off payment for working from home to help us set up. Hey guys, this isn't going to be temporary, and so there was a contribution made to us to be able to help facilitate. What do we need to those extras? Yes, there's the provision of equipment and software and services, but yeah, that extra, how do we help with those little things? George?
Yeah, just to add to that as well, given that there are so many things that we need to factor into our decision making, I think this is a great time as well to think about continuous loop of feedback with employees as well. So whether it be around well-being, whether it be supporting an infrastructure that supports them, whether it be around just broader communications, whether it's about performance management. I think this is where being able to lean on technology to be able to elicit feedback in real time from employees that can then arm decision leaders with their decision making. There's nothing worse than having these significant blind spots or making assumptions around what employees need. That simple process of collecting data and then being able to use that to inform decision making and prioritize physical and financial resources as well. If the internet's a problem for 80% of your employees, well then is there a far more holistic approach that you can take to try and solve for that? Because it's going to be a different problem if it's just 1 or 2 people. So I think that whole idea of as the workforce is disseminated, how do we start gathering stories, both informal and informal, and also data to start informing us around, what the next steps are.
Jordan, how does that impact your business? What Milan's talked about the fact that the office and not really going to the office for 4 months now, and really making that decision early. But in your thinking around the well-being for your team, supporting organisations that are delivering to frontline, how does that impact your strategic thinking?
It's been really challenging. I mean, we've had a lot of conversations, and we're so torn about. We want people in the office because they're struggling. Some of them are really struggling, and we're doing everything that we can to support them. And there are others that are loving it. And we're seeing this. There's a big, and we've heard this before on the call, that there's some that have increased productivity significantly, and others that are still thereabouts. But you just know, and you talk to them, and there's so much that you want to do, but there's so little that you can do at the same time. So it's a really difficult one for me personally. Looking at, I don't think I'll ever work full time in the office again myself. I definitely want to be in the office, but I think now having a setup at home where I can work here, on the road, seeing clients in the office, whatever it might be, that will definitely be the new norm. So, I definitely miss being in the office. But some of the challenges I've faced, and Emma mentioned about internet connections. Early on, when we started to work from home, the internet was fine at home. And then all of a sudden, the schools got shut down, and I'd be doing Zoom meetings and everyone would freeze and I couldn't hear them. And that was a significant challenge. And then got the internet upgraded, but then we needed to make sure things like our routers and everything else was also secured, because what we're seeing is with so many people, spread out, there's a much bigger landscape area that, our clients can be attacked. So we're doing everything that we can to work with them in regards to that. And there's a lot of conversations need to continue to happen because there's just so many more people that will now be working remotely. So, we use 8x8 internally, and that's been amazing for us in terms of, from a continuity perspective. We've got Amy, who takes all of our calls that come inbound, and now she started with us probably just over a month ago, and we did bring her in internally for onboarding. At home, her internet connection is not good at all, and it's a really poor internet connection. So that's a challenge. However, through the ability to have the app on our phone, she's basically our 1300 numbers going into the managed app on the phone, the 8x8 app, and no one would know whether she's sitting in our office, at home, or away on holiday. She could be anywhere, and it's allowed us to continue to operate smoothly. And even with all of our staff, with the ability to transfer, clients back to another colleague, or even just calling a client back, we're maintaining that security around. We've seen other businesses and even some local councils that I'm speaking to, they are having their employees call me or their clients on a mobile phone, and their personal mobile phone. And then it's what happens from that. Do they then start getting direct calls to their mobile phone? We're talking about, it's challenging to switch off whilst you're at home already. And then if you're getting all these mobile phone calls, text messages, just compounds it. So definitely 8x8's been a technology, or a big part of our technology change as well.
It's a really good point that you raise, and actually I have something that I'm going to maybe direct to Mark, but it's a similar scenario, an organisation that's in that not-for-profit space, and people are doing that. Their personal mobile phone is becoming that vehicle that is being used in the outreach work that they do. But then that puts that person in a difficult situation. As Jordan talks about, there's no delineation then between work and home. But the extension of that also is that, in some of those challenging circumstances, you can't always get to that phone. Whereas if that was a 1300 number as a support line, thank you. And actually, we will wrap up in just a couple of moments, because I am conscious of even Milan and Jordan's time today, given that they've got a lot of operational things to do. But just quickly, Mark, to you, how do you work in a normal environment, in the old normal, and then in the new normal? Is that having an impact?
Yeah, look, our current phone systems, and I'll just take that point. We had Telstra lines, landlines, and it was a what do you call a SIP PABX, so it's a digital PABX machine on all sites. So I can dial an extension number and get anyone in any geographical location. But to ring in during this period for clients, and we have over 2,500 clients at any one time.
Wow.
Their clients being supported in the community. I've got a phone in the next room, which rings off the hook all the time, and that's now being collected remotely by 6 staff members who filter through Wave left voice messages and then send out emails as the quickest way to repurpose where we were. So we haven't quite got there yet, and it's definitely on our tick list. But everyone is using their mobiles and having landlines diverge wherever possible to their mobiles. It is a work mobile, but it's still problematic because you get an abundance of calls. So we will address that, but in the order of importance, it was down, but it is something that we really need to get right.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So we have gone 15 minutes over time, and I'm really grateful for the continued contribution, because I think it's been really enlightening to have some more. Thank you for those who have just messaged to said that they need to drop off. And I think we should, Jordan and Milan, bring the event to a close. I did just want to thank again Jordan and Milan and Diana, obviously, for doing a lot of the groundwork, organising those care packs. That really does make it personal, and that was probably the springboard for us to really have a platform where we did get to share some personal things and make it interactive. And I actually feel like I've got to know people as much as I would have at an in-person event. So I hope that you've got that similar feeling. And thank you again, Jordan.
You. And Lisa, your pack is still in transit, so you will get a pack. But thank you to everybody for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Have
guys.
a great day and stay safe.
Okay.